That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Control Plus Create, AI for Creatives, a special 5-part pulse check mini-series from Enrollify and Element 451. I'm Dave Hunt, Executive Creative Director and longtime higher ed marketer. In this series, I'm sitting down with leaders and creative leads who are partnering with AI to scale ideas, streamline workflows, and push their work further without losing their voice. You'll get behind-the-scenes stories and practical playbooks to help you turn AI into your newest collaborator, not your competition. Whether you're leading strategy or hands-on in the work, our goal is to give you the tools and inspiration to unlock new possibilities with AI. Let's dive in. My guest today is Anne Murphy. Anne is the founder of SheLeadsAI, a movement bringing accomplished women together to advance AI for global prosperity. She's a leading AI operations consultant, helping organizations integrate AI responsibly through a focus on people, process, and culture. Anne has trained thousands of professionals in responsible AI deployment and serves on advisory boards shaping the future of ethical AI. She also brings decades of experience in fundraising, driving growth for STEM education and research in higher education, now serving the nonprofit sector through her firm, Empowered Fundraising Consulting. Anne, I'm so excited for our conversation. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I'm really excited too.
So, Anne, you spent decades leading development teams in higher ed, then pivoted to founding SheLeadsAI. Can you start our conversation by giving us a high-level overview of the mission of SheLeadsAI and what convinced you that empowering women through this revolution was the next chapter of your creative leadership story?
Oh, I have a creative leadership story. That's
Yes.
wonderful. I should probably preface this by explaining how I got into AI, which it's kind of like with fundraising where everyone comes to it from a different point of view, a different entry point. But for me, it was that I had left my, 30-year-long career because I knew that I wanted to do work on my own. I wanted to serve a whole bunch of different organizations with the skills that I developed over 30 years, people pouring into me, winning a lot of coin flips as a white woman. Unfortunately, as soon as I left my job, I began an 18-month long battle with long COVID. And so here I was, just did the scariest thing, leaving my totally secure, happy, lovely career to launch my own thing. And I couldn't think straight. I had brain fog. I had post-exertion exhaustion. There was no way that I was going to be able to do all the things. But I saw Sam Altman on some show and I was like, oh, well, this sounds really interesting. And I opened up ChatGPT, and as a lot of your listeners will know, no doubt, in the early days, it was just that little box on the screen, no documentation, no information, nothing. And I had been told the entirety of the internet is available through this little box. And I was like, there's no way. This little box? I'm going to type some stuff into this box. I'm going to get the access to the whole entire internet? No way. Well, sure enough, that's what happened. And I became basically, a co-creator with ChatGPT from day one. I never thought of it as an answer machine. I thought about it as my second brain. And it allowed me to move on and to excel out of the gates with my company, which, of course, running a small business, you're supposed to be unsuccessful in the beginning. But ChatGPT was like there for me. It had my back, and I was able to put together my plans, my writing, my pricing, my pitch decks, like all the things that you have to have. And so when I saw the impact that it had for me and the impact that it had for my family as a result, I thought, oh my gosh, other people need to know about this. And one of my mentors told me, as soon as you feel like you're the fifth grader to the fourth grader, that's when you start teaching. And so that's what happened. I just put some marketing out there online about teaching free sessions about how to use ChatGPT. And I had about 6 slides. And the first one I taught had 0 people there, but I had been taught, even if you have 0 people, you give the presentation. Hardest presentation I've ever given. I would rather speak to a football stadium. But I was determined, like, this is my mission for the moment, is making sure that particularly marginalized people have access to the most powerful tool that we have seen since the printing press, or maybe even since fire. Um, and that's how that went. And as soon as I started teaching these courses and getting some traction with just, getting my name out there, the people who showed up on my Zoom screen were Gen X women. And they showed up with, yes, trepidation because it's totally unknown, but also with gusto, with enthusiasm. They were intrepid, wanting to learn this new thing that held promise for shifting the balance of power, particularly in their work lives.
That's awesome. There was a lot of coverage this year. The Harvard Business School came out with this report and cited a bunch of studies that, and some were even more dire than what Harvard was reporting, but that there is this gender gap in usage. And, we were talking a little bit before we recorded. As someone in higher ed, I'm not seeing it, but I wanted to talk with you about it because, obviously, if there is truly a gender gap, it has significant, we red flags, fire alarms should be sounding because this is a huge revolution and we need every voice involved with this, and absolutely women. But what are you actually seeing when it comes to that reported gender gap? Is it there? Is it not? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, any studies can go one way or the other, and you need to poke holes at them. And I'll share a couple of my observations on those studies that indicate that women are adopting AI at a lower rate. One is that we are actually accelerating much faster in our adoption rate, even according to the data, right? They're showing, I think women doubled their acceleration rate in 2024 while men kind of stayed about the same. So we're catching up even according to the data. But where I would poke holes in the data is that my experience is that women are vastly underreporting their use of generative AI. And it goes back to the way that we're socialized as women to be a good girl, to wait for permission, to be likable, to not run laps around our colleagues of other genders, right? To fit in, to stay under the radar. And this is a new experience of having, like, quite a lot of power, right? Generative AI puts all this power in your hands that requires a ton of responsibility and a ton of empathy to determine how are we as individuals, going to use the tools, what are our red lines, and then how are we going to impact society, right? Local, global, the whole gamut. And so with women underreporting that significantly, I really have to question the data about adoption rates because it's just not been my experience. The other thing to kind of have in mind for folks is that we're not participating in what got us here. None of us are, right? What got us here is not going to get us where we need to go. Brave new world. And when that happens, we have to create whole new systems. And that is going to take a little while. This is not the patriarchy that we've worked in, right? This is a matriarchy now. Feminine leadership styles will be, notwithstanding the oligarchy of the 5 or 6 main frontier models. Okay, well, I can give them that. But I think on a local level, family, community, education, marketing, et cetera, you're gonna see that a feminine leadership style is much, much more effective, now because of how, like, face meltingly confrontational AI is in all of our lives. It's changing our self-identity. If we see ourselves like, you ask somebody what they do for a living. Some of them might say surfer, others are going to say writer, right? Others are going to say artist. If your word that you use to describe yourself is writer, then generative AI can be incredibly threatening and upsetting, and we worry about our livelihood. So it just changing the system is going to take a little bit of time. And when we start making those, greater strides, I think you're going to see the women's adoption rate go up so high that it'll be irrefutable that women are adopting generative AI at a very high rate.
You maybe touched on a couple things there, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that you'd add about how women are uniquely qualified to lead with AI.
So here's an interesting reason why women are uniquely qualified to lead in AI is because in so many industries, the C-suite is populated by males. The C-suite is uniquely underqualified to guide how AI implementation should roll out because they're not the boots on the ground. They're not doing the work. They're not seeing the use cases. They're not seeing where particular workflows are going to bump up against the organization's values or ethics or policies. And so, given that women tend to not be in those roles, now we're in the next role and we're guiding the implementation. I'm on the faculty with SHRM, the Society for HR Managers. It's a pretty large trade organization. And a lot of HR leaders are, as you know, women. They're under pressure because their C suite is saying, hey, can you go make that? Can we just do that AI stuff? Can you just
Right.
make that happen? And they're like, sure. And they come to our course for a certification, and they are asking the questions about what does it mean when we have the employee manual in a chat bot, and Joe, who loves to call me every time about the inclement weather policy, now has to use the chatbot. What does that mean for Joe? What does that mean for Joe's department? Things like that, where you might not think that this is a people, process, and culture project. You think it might be a tech project. And I think that women are more likely to, just as their leadership style, go to the part about the impact on people.
That makes sense. One of the things the Harvard Business School article mentioned at the end was talking about psychological safety. They cite Amy Edmondson and her research on that topic. And having looked at your website and all your LinkedIn posts, it did click for me that it feels like one of the things that you're doing is creating psychological safety, whether that's, I'm assuming because of how much you're doing it, there's some intentionality there.
For
But
sure.
I'm wondering, like, what have you learned about facilitating psychologically safe spaces where you can bring in skeptics and dabblers and enthusiasts and early adopters all together so that they can level up as co-learners?
Yeah. Such a good question, and I'm definitely a work in progress on this. Being a community leader is a skill set. It's a little bit of a gift too, but navigating that type of leadership is very different than being a leader in higher ed. It's a much more porous form of leadership. There aren't quite there's no PD for what I'm doing.
Right, right. Sure.
And so I'm a work in progress on this, but what I'll share is that for about 18 months, my husband and I, Donnie is my business partner as well as my partner, we hosted these events. They're called Weekend GPT Jams. They're on Saturday from noon to 2. And what would happen is, we would say, hey, meeting's over. We're going to hang out for a little bit. Or I would say, I'm going to hang out for a little bit. If anyone wants to just chat, the guys would leave and the meeting would really begin. Because we could talk about all the things. What's it like to be, like in my case, an aspiring grandma, right? I've got Gen X kids. I want to be a cool grandma someday. What does generative AI mean for my grandkids, right? What does generative AI mean for all the women who've made their livelihood and clawed out, in some case, a livelihood as an artist, right? I mean, we had conversations about, is it actually art even? Are these other people who are doing, AI, they're now called synthographers. The synthographers, are they actually artists? Am I, Anne Murphy, an artist when I can barely sketch? Those kind of conversations where it was like, we want to be able to say all the things we're in a space where we have a shared identity as being socialized as women. So that's a big part of it. The other stuff is that we have agreements. We say, here's the deal. And, one of ours is in our She Leads AI Society, which is the membership. One of our agreements is that we will not share anyone's IP outside of our community. And that's a tip for your listeners. The learning that's happening, the real learning, the day-to-day stuff that totally levels you up is happening inside communities because there's so much IP and because no one is an expert. It requires relationships. That's it. I will die on this hill. And so, whatever Coursera, et cetera, is out there, the Microsoft free courses are out there. No shade to them at all. There's not enough hours in the day for all of us to learn all the quirks and opportunities with generative AI, but we share them with each other. So if all else fails, we have a code of conduct that we've all agreed to that creates psychological safety. There have been a few times where we bump up against people's like difference of opinion. I'll share one with you that came out of our social Saturday this week, and it was perfect kind of microcosm of how people have different red lines on what they would hand over to generative AI. And one of the women said, I would never let AI write my Christmas cards. And like for me, Dave, that was one of the first things I thought of was how can I how
Right.
can I get generative AI to write my Christmas cards so they could go out for the first time in however many years? I don't
Right.
like writing them. I don't like
Yeah.
writing anything with my hands because I haven't used my hands to write in so long. And then there are lots of people who are right in the middle. And, for things that are more serious than Christmas cards that have, security risks, we'll argue over whether a tool is appropriate, right? Is DeepSeek, the original DeepSeek, the one that's governed by the rules in the Chinese government? Do we want to be uploading all of our stuff? Are we even okay uploading our stuff to ChatGPT? Like, some people are, some people aren't. For those of us who are educators, we have to be a little bit more kind of dogmatic and thorough about it because oftentimes people use us as what the red line should be. And that's not the goal, right? We're trying to lay out what's the evolution, what's the, where do you fall on it's okay to use generative AI for this thing? And everybody as individuals has to make up their own mind. So we have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. It's funny. I've had so many conversations with lots of different people, and it feels like everybody had like if it's something I don't like doing, of course I'm fine with ChatGPT doing it for me. And so like there's very unique, like the person who I would never use it to I fill in the blank, right? Like
Mhm,
I'm a
mhm.
songwriter. I would never use it to write songs, but I hate writing lyrics. I'd use it to write lyrics, but I write lyrics. I'd never use it to, it's just you go in these circles of like, well, wherever somebody feels like they want to enhance or build in something that they can't do themselves, it feels like there's comfort even while there's maybe protests from other corners. um, but of course,
Well,
like
and
ethics, of course, are different.
ethics are different, but that's the learning. Like that's the takeaway is to be able to create a space where people can say, I am not okay with this. I had an awakening not too long ago. I was working with one of our university clients, and the IT guy, the head IT guy, kind of hung out after a workshop and said, I can't tell anybody this at work, but I am actually morally opposed to AI, to generative AI. And here I am, I have this job. And that university had tasked IT with the rollout, which I would not recommend, but not my monkey, not my circus.
Right.
But we have to be prepared so that when we discover, and hopefully sooner than later, somebody would tell us that, what do we do about the IT director who's morally opposed to generative AI, who we're thinking is going to be in charge of a rollout? What do we do with the people who are ambivalent? That's arguably a more difficult demographic for us to work with because, boy, and is ambivalence ever the antithesis to the kind of resilience and curiosity one needs to learn something new as a grown-up, you know?
It's the whole, like, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference or apathy
Yes,
or whatever.
it's like
Yes,
that. It's
yes.
like that. You're like, "Oh dear, we can't what are you gonna do?" And then even with the champions, you need to be thoughtful about because generative AI can become pretty addictive and it can kind of take over one's life pretty easily because there's so much, I mean, just brain chemistry, right? There's a lot of dopamine when you start offloading stuff you don't like doing. You're like, this is amazing.
Right. Well, and then when ChatGPT is trained to, like, always give you a pat on the back with every response
Oh
that it
God,
gives
I
you
know.
too,
It's
like,
so,
"Oh, good
yeah.
human." Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
human. Yeah. And like for lots of us who grew up Gen X, drinking out of the garden hose and eating peanut butter out of the
Yes.
jar, we're like, oh my God, somebody's giving us praise? Like, this is so nice.
Me?
We've been needing it. So, but you think about the champions, and even for them, we need to be really thoughtful because most of the time they're not set up to have a second job, which is the AI rollout, essentially, because so much of it gets put on their shoulders because they're the one telling their colleagues, oh my gosh, this is great. We should use it for XYZ. And the colleague going, I don't know, and like 5 phone calls later, they're starting to get into it and then they're having questions. So we need to be careful about our champions too, so that we're not letting them or making them or by default, having them do the rollout with no change in their position description, no change in their leadership, what leadership level they are at, what projects they're currently working on. So it just requires us to break what's already broken. So many leaders have not created psychological safety. Now, overnight, they got to figure out how to do it.
You mentioned Gen X, and I know, like, we're the least popular generation to talk about, but dang it, it's my show and my last episode, so I'm going to ask what I want to ask. So, thinking about my fellow Xers, and maybe saying, well, I'll give you an opportunity to say negative things too. How about that? We'll be fair.
Sure. Okay.
You've posted about Gen X on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Do you see in your work any unique strengths or blind spots with that Gen X mid-career leader when it comes to thinking about AI upskilling?
I mean, it's tempting to treat us like a monolith, and we definitely aren't.
Well, right.
I would say that if there is a challenge, it's that the structures and the way we do things, we were raised, into our work lives by boomers. And those structures are what have been working for us and what have gotten us to where we are, middle, upper, level leadership. And so now we're having to look at it and go, but wait a second. Like things are really, really, really different now. How do we do things differently when our whole lives this other way of doing stuff has been successful? Think about all the things we did that were just us grinding it out. And, Gen X is, we love for everybody to know how hard we work. And that is a huge part of our self identity. It's how we get our cookies, our gold stars is achievement. So achievement and hard work have been conflated in our society. Think of an example of, let's say you're doing, like, a marketing team is working on a campaign case statement. Well, the beauty and the value in producing a banger campaign case statement is not actually about the final product. It's about the focus groups, the conversations, bringing all the stakeholders into a group, one-on-ones with important people. That's the reason why we really do a case statement. And of course, then a beautiful artifact comes out of that. Well, if we decide that we can do the case statement with generative AI rather than spending, tens or twenties or thirties of thousands of dollars on it and 2 years, then what we have sacrificed in the process is that building of community, the galvanizing of the game plan. And so that becomes an important consideration. And for a lot of us, we're going to default to, no, we got to do it the old way. We have to, period, like, end of discussion. And so I think it's going to be hard to break some of those molds. There's that saying about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But really, this is taking a wrecking ball to the whole bathroom.
I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to talk about another thing that you've posted about a couple times on LinkedIn. And that is around all of the posting that people are doing and the hand wringing that's happening around AI writing and AI punctuation. And I'm
Yes.
obviously a big AI evangelist, but I'm going to
Yes.
confess that a couple months ago, I did a little post. I made a little image in ChatGPT of me with a bionic arm and was joking about how, I feel like I was using the M-2 decades ago and
Yeah,
now AI is
exactly.
doing it. And I feel like I have to change. But I mean, I'm at a place where I've been more than happy to change because I see what it's worth to
Yeah.
do that change. But one of your posts actually got me to realize, I'm just going to take that post down because you make a very compelling point about the idea that some of this conversation really is a form of gatekeeping. And I hope it's not too much rehashing, but I'd love you to jump on the soapbox for a minute and talk about this, because what you're writing is fun and it's passionate, but I also think it's really important to hear what you have to say on this.
It's definitely not rehashing because it weighs really heavy on my heart every day and makes me feel like I'm the right person at the right time for some of the work that I
Mm.
get to do every day. And I should preface it by saying I am part of the problem, right? Because I teach advanced AI writing, and that's not meant to gatekeep, but it is to say, everyone and anyone, not only can you get reasonable output working maybe a little bit above the average bear, but you can, if you know some of the techniques, and if you understand what really makes you you and what your point of view is and what your voice is, you can really become the best communicator you've ever been. And I differentiate now between communicator and writer, because sometimes what we are doing now is we're producing writing. And the goal is to be a good communicator. The goal is not to write Shakespeare. It's not to actually write even something that we like. And what becomes important to understand there is that our role as leaders in higher ed and beyond, our role as leaders is really to remove barriers to things, right? And if we think about all the people who've been at a disadvantage because they weren't either born with great writing skills, maybe their parents weren't, they didn't go to top-notch schools, right? They haven't worked, essentially paid to perfect their craft in roles moving up and up in their career path. And so we've lost those people's leadership skills, their, inspiration, their understanding of human design, all of these things that we have lost simply because of the worship of the written word. It's not, it doesn't feel just. And so what I like to point out to people is that when we're running around saying ChatGPT isn't a good enough writer, what we're doing is we're protecting our own comfort. We think we're protecting our own careers. We're not, right? I mean, we've already drunk the Kool-Aid. We understand that there's no point in trying to say, I'm just going to be a human writer, period. I mean, if you feel that way, more power to you. I just think that for the masses, that's not going to be the case. And so we're protecting our own comfort, but in the meanwhile, we're also saying to people who haven't historically been in power positions or proximity to power, we're saying this comfort is for me, not for you. This access that we can get through generative AI, this excellence, right? This self-actualization, this money, this career path, it's for me, not for you. So I'm going to look at your writing and I'm going to say, that's not good enough because it looks like it has AI in it. And that's a pillar of white supremacy society, right? It exists, it lives, it's in me, it's in you, it's in everybody. And the gatekeeping and the worship of the written word are both two things that we can move on from. We can put that behind us now. But running around talking about, ChatGPT isn't a good enough writer and having that be like your main topic you post on, first of all, it's the least interesting content. I
Right.
mean, who's running through a wall to read another LinkedIn post about an M dash? Like nobody wants to read it. Nobody cares what you
Yes.
think about it. So
Absolutely.
that's my take on that, Dave.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's important. I also think like a lot of the people who um I'm seeing, people who I don't know, like I know like writers as a category, right, are one of the groups that are really harping on some of that. And I also think like I've seen people, people are looking for the kind of the gaps in the armor and the gaps in the wall for like, well, I can't use AI yet because look at this silly thing that it did. It's dumb. It doesn't know. And it's like a new model is going to come out of ChatGPT and it's going to stop doing all these, egregious volumes of M dashes. And what's your next argument going to be? Like it's going to dial down the emojis and it's going to, stop
Right.
using certain sentence structures over and
Yep.
over again. And your argument's going to dissipate and you're going to have to move on to like the next thing that you use as a form of protest against this. But it's not,
Oh, that's a good
it's going to
point.
shift. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, they'll
It's
come
going to
up with
keep
the next
shifting.
thing.
I also thought your post on AI not being trustworthy and yet still leading to discovery and performance and achievement was really spot on. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on maybe how you actually do this, how you help leaders embrace adopting tools that have so much potential, but at the same time, we're in this weird position where we also have to say, but you can't blindly trust them.
This is an important consideration for all of us who think of ourselves as, AI optimists and AI evangelists. We are in the biggest both and part of our careers, of our lives, where holding on to both things, that it's perilous and it's so promising. Holding on to those two things at once is just where we live now. And it's really tempting to come up with a comfy point of view, as a lot of leaders actually are very accustomed to doing. Top level leaders are oftentimes coming up with the point of view that's palatable for their stakeholders. So to take kind of either it's positive or it's negative based on who you surround yourself with is not the right approach, but it's the comfortable, easy approach. And likely it's not going to last forever. They're probably, folks are kind of treading water and waiting to see where things land. But the cavalry is not coming. We have to develop our own points of view. And so when I'm working with leaders, I'm careful to articulate all of the downsides. Like, let's go through it. The environmental impact, the social, the human rights impact. Like, you can go down the list, the geopolitical nonsense, the administration's nonsense, the Elon Musk,
Right.
let's not have
Yeah.
any barriers, the whole nine. It's important for us as leaders to demonstrate that we deeply understand that and we have a respect for the downsides and that we're committed to ameliorating those, right, in our own work, because it does come down to each individual person. So I outlined for them that how important it is to be forthright about that. Don't hide what's bad about it, because if you're running around presenting yourself as an AI hype person, you lose credibility. Meanwhile, of course, other side of the coin, if we don't hype it, nobody's gonna, that's like we have to inspire people to adopt it sometimes. And sometimes we're the cheerleader. I feel like I'm like a Tony Robbins. Is that the guy, the
Yes.
inspirational speaker? Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
the Tony
Yes.
Robbins of AI. And I sometimes I get this like little pit in my stomach, like, oh boy, did I really represent this in a way that's fair? And I've evolved along those lines. So I talk more about just a balanced, right? What are the red flags and what are some of the solutions for that? But it's tricky. There's a lot to be worried about. We have a book group, She Leads Reads, and we've been able to meet with the authors of some of these really seminal works. And there's a book called The New Empire of AI. And Rachel Adams, she articulates like every single topic of all the things that give us like keep us up at night. And it was really helpful. When we met with her, she there were a number of instances during our Q&A where she said, "I don't know." Like, "I don't know." And I thought she's the end all be all. She knows all the things. She
Yeah.
said, "I
Right.
don't know how we're balancing it. I don't know how we're
Yeah.
balancing it." And I'm like, "Okay, she doesn't know. It's okay that I don't know."
Yes. Yes. That's been something I've noticed kind of throughout my career too, is like when you see people who are truly at the top, the people who've thought about things a lot, the people who are true experts, even just people in your own career, like the leaders that impress me the most are the ones who are open to saying like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um,
Thank
and it's okay
goodness for
that I
those
don't know.
people.
And right. Right. But
Yes.
I love that she's open like that, because I think that
Yeah.
we need that honesty and transparency during all of this.
Oh, transparency, that's the word. Exactly. The transparency and the authenticity and being able to share, yeah, I didn't sleep last night because of this new thing that happened and I can't stop worrying about it, or like Ethan Malik, who's one of the authors that I really respect, prolific for sure. Um, he says, if you're not losing sleep, you're not doing it right. And I
Yeah.
believe that to be true. I believe that to be
Yes.
true. There's no way to not worry. It's so existential.
We've talked about the worries, and I think that they're very legitimate. I'd like to go out on something positive though. If we dream big and things go well, what do you think is like a snapshot of the ideal, inclusive, creative future that we have the potential to create with AI?
Yeah. I mean, I think about things like, um, wouldn't it be so awesome if AI can help me talk to my dog and know what they're thinking?
Yeah.
And then I think, "Oh my god, what if I find out that my dog, like, only likes me because I give him food all the time?" You're like,
Yeah.
all these
It's
things
like a
have, like,
monkey
a
paw
pro
wish.
and a con, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I really wanna know how annoyed he is when I give him kisses? But for me, the number one thing is putting power into the hands of people who historically have not had access to it. What would
Yeah.
it be like in our world if the people who actually use these tools and the people who are impacted downstream, what if they had a say in all of this?
Mhm.
Our world would be such a different place. And I know that this is, I'm not Pollyanna about it. It's going to be ugly for a little while, but in that process, things are deconstructing and we can rebuild them the way that is a more socially just way. And we can use, like I said, we can use this era to break what's already broken and really
Mhm.
change the power dynamic. That's what I hope for.
I hope for that too. I love that. Well, Anne,
Yeah.
if people would like to learn more about you and connect with you, learn more about She Leads AI or Empowered Fundraising Consulting, how can they find you?
A really easy way to find me is on LinkedIn because I'm there all the time. And if you look me up, it's going to say Ann Murphy, Ann with an E, Murphy, and it'll say something about AI and fundraising. So you won't be able to miss me. Another way to find out more about She Leads AI is to go to our website, which is SheLeadsAI.ai. And if folks are interested in diving in and they identify as a woman, we have a social Saturday meetup every weekend from 10 a.m. to noon Pacific. And it's just a nice, warm, inviting opportunity to meet other women at all, like everywhere in their journey. That's
Yeah.
typically how people get to learn about what we're up to and what we're like. And it's just a really, really nice way to spend a little portion of your weekend. So social Saturdays every weekend from 10 to noon Pacific time.
Awesome. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much, Anne.
Thank
This is
you.
the last episode in my mini series, so I want to thank Enrollify for the opportunity to host this show. I've really loved this great excuse to connect with brilliant people like Anne for deep conversations about AI and how we collaborate with AI to create and lead creatives during this pivotal time. I hope that you all have felt inspired and empowered and ready to be part of what happens next because we need your voice at the table. As always, I'd hope you'll join us on LinkedIn to share your favorite takeaways from this episode and appreciate you all listening. And Anne, I'd love to end the whole series on something you wrote about creating and collaborating with AI.
This technology is ubiquitous. It's for you as much as it's for everyone else. You're not cutting corners. You're not cheating or plagiarizing. Your brain is not going to rot. You won't forget how to write or strategize or tell stories. When you learn how to use it responsibly, AI will amplify the best of you. The world gets more you, and that's a win.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.